Hey guys, good evening and welcome to The Writer's Journey. I'm your host, Lauren Moore, and with me is Kayleen Williams. We're two authors on a journey to learn more about writing success, so thanks for joining us on the ride. Tonight we're talking about getting the most out of book conventions, live and in person, and talking to people. What? Or as Josh Hayes puts it, we're going to talk about the pros and cons to selling your books in person. So we brought on the con queen herself, Patricia Gilliam. She's the author of the She's the author of the Hanaria series and a contributor to several science fiction anthologies. She's been attending conventions for the last 5 years and actually enjoys them.
Yay!
So thanks Patricia for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So how's everyone's week been going? What have you guys been up to?
Oh, a lot of working, a lot of writing.
Yes, that's the best kind that we want to hear. What are you working on? What are you writing?
Right now I'm working on the superhero and urban fantasy series. It's called Heroes of Corvus.
Nice. Are you allowed to spoil it a little bit and tell us about your superhero?
Basically, it's from the point of view of a villain who actually has to protect a child because the hero is presumed dead.
Ooh, interesting.
Whoa, nice little plot twist right at the beginning. I love it.
Does the villain have powers?
Uh-huh. Yep, almost as equal as the heroes do.
Ooh, good. Very good. So wait, then who's the bad guy?
A worse bad guy.
Ooh, I like it.
Villain unknowingly becomes a heroic villain. Awesome.
Kayleen, you've got a short story coming up in Castre Medium's near future anthology.
Yay! I barely squeaked in on time with that one. Oh my goodness. But I'm so happy. Yeah.
I've read an early draft, but I'm really looking forward to seeing the final draft when it's all done and published.
Yes. My my little robot character, I think it came out really nice. So super excited about that.
Anything else going on in Kayleen world?
I am tackling the next anthology because I don't want to run into that close of a time crunch again. And just everyday life things. Nothing exciting there.
Everyday things, that's something we all know about and struggle with and deal with, obviously.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And for all of you Keystroke Medium fans out there, the next anthology coming up is Space Opera. And I'm very excited to read all of your submissions. So get right on them now. Make them awesome, make them good, and I can't wait to read them. When will we be taking submissions for that? March, April?
That is still up in the air because I don't think the near future is coming out until April. So it probably won't be until sometime after that.
So probably you've got a couple months to work on that. So
yeah.
Can't wait to read them. And then me, I'm working on a super secret project. Got some editing projects. And then I've got a con coming up too. I'm going to Awesome Con. So Yay. I can't wait to hear all about cons from you and to learn all your tricks about socializing. Yay! In person with hundreds and thousands of people around. So we want to know how you do it.
And and with that in mind, how do we even decide if selling at a con is good for us?
I think a lot of it depends on your genre, and you want to basically pick the cons where the main guests are going to match up with your books. Not everybody is going to be readers, but at the same time, everybody loves those stories, and that's where you're going to find your connection point.
Right. So how do we find those cons that will attract our readers? How do we know which cons will match our genre and match the target audience that we're looking for with our manuscript?
A lot of times what I do is I look at the main guests. If they are, like in my case, if they are sci-fi or fantasy related, that's usually a good indicator that you're going to have fans of those types of stories. Sometimes there's some overlap. I wouldn't go too far off base. Like if you write sci-fi, you may not do as well if you do like horror or something that's more thriller based. you want to just look at what's going to be the most effective, almost like you would any other marketing campaign. Who are my readers? What's going to match up well?
So what are some of the cons that you've been to that are good for science fiction?
I've had really good luck out of Fanboy Expo, which is kind of local to this region. And then Heroes and Villains is another good one. That's run by Steve Amell from Arrow.
So all these cons, because like where would you start to like really find them? Would you just like go on Google or?
Yeah, the early ones I actually found out word of mouth. How I got started in this was a friend invited me to one just to be as the second person in their booth to kind of watch everything. And so that was kind of been a fun experience because I started off being kind of the tag along person and I loved it. And so started getting my own booths and for about the past 5 years. And
oh, wow.
It keeps getting better and better every year that I've done it.
So, are you naturally like an outgoing person? Are you naturally? Is it easy for you to make friends? And
I'm kind of right in the middle. I've taken personality tests, and I'm right on that middle of the extrovert introvert line. So I have a lot of friends who are introverts, and so I can definitely I have an understanding of that, of the moments where you kind of want to crawl in. It's like, I don't want to be around the people, that kind of thing.
No peopling.
No peopling today. So I kind of bounce back and forth, and a lot of it just depends on the situation. And so a lot of times when I go into this, I realize it's like, okay, almost switching into that mode. It's like, okay, this is going to be talking to people and interacting with people. And then usually after that following week, I take a lot of downtime and kind of recharge on the other side of things. So I kind of bounce back and forth.
So you went anyway. You went to these cons and you found out the water's warm. You know, it's fun. Meeting people can be fun and can be exciting. You can have a good time. But I like how you started out by going as someone's wing woman. It wasn't just you at that booth, one person there. You went with someone else to kind of join them. So you want to talk about that strategy of taking people with you or joining someone else there at a con?
I think if somebody's completely new to it, then it is definitely a great idea to tag along with somebody else if you have someone, or possibly volunteer, or even just going as an attendee and just going around and getting feedback from people. And you will get a lot of tips. People are very friendly. The ones that I've been into, it's a very good environment, very good community. Most of these are family friendly, and people want to help. And that's something, when you find those environments where people care, and it's almost like a pay it forward situation where it's like, okay, I started off like this, and then I want to help as many other people as possible. Hey, if you're interested in this is things that you can do that can help.
Yeah, especially when, I mean, the more authors that you get at a convention, the more draw it'll bring. So, I mean, why wouldn't you want to help?
Yeah, you know? and at least locally, that environment, they've been able to draw in some higher name authors. Timothy Zahn last year, that was awesome, getting to meet him, and kind of the same personality as far as wanting to help people and being very open and very sharing about things that help.
So in choosing a con, we want to look at our genre and look for conventions that are in our genre. We also want to look at other authors that are similar to us, authors that our target audience would be interested in, and go to cons where those people will be at. So stalk other authors, follow them to cons, set up your booth next to theirs, be a friend.
Just don't be creepy.
Don't be creepy.
Yeah, I have seen creepy sometimes, and it's very funny, just not at the time.
Yeah.
How does social media play into this when you're at a con?
What I usually do is before everything kind of opens to the public, I kind of do a quick tour, find other people's booths, talk to other people. And that's a great time to do the networking, is before everything opens up, and you can meet other authors, and met a lot of artists and everything too. And a lot of times, don't ignore people who are in other creative fields, because a lot of times they're readers. A lot of times they know other readers, and a lot of times if you do this a lot, you're gonna be running into the same people multiple times, and it's a good way for friendships to develop.
So I think we're kind of getting into some of what are the benefits of going to a convention. If I'm deciding whether or not I should go, if it's worth the time investment and the money investment in getting prepared and going. So what are some of the benefits of going to a book convention and setting up a booth and doing all of that?
And I think there's a lot of benefits. The primary, I think, if you're treating this as a business and you're wanting to get the financial side out of it, just setting yourself up in the best possible environment of making sure that you're going to make enough money to recoup your costs. If you're just starting out, if you just have one book or two, that's when you want to team up with someone, and that way you're only having to pay for half a table. Your other expenses aren't going to be as much, but as you grow, a lot of times having your own marketing setup, you're going to make more having your own table. Let's see, I was trying to think of as far as other benefits, panels. Authors who have more experience are going to be talking about different topics. Looking at trends. If a certain television show is popular and you have the ability to write in that genre, it's like, okay, you can kind of get ahead of what people are interested in and kind of even plan out your writing that way too. It's like, okay, this is something that's starting to spike, and it can help you plan ahead in that regard too. And then local networking. People who are bloggers, podcasters, a lot of times they're going to be going to these events as well. Even some of the local like news media, they usually are covered. And just taking a combination of everything. I don't look at it just, okay, I'm going to make X amount of dollars or setting that number amount. You definitely want to be building toward, okay, I'm going to make enough to pay for my expenses and start to grow. But I think a lot of times if it's the first time they've ever done it and it's like, oh, I paid $100 for my booth and I made $30, you need to look at other aspects, especially if you're going to be doing it long term.
Yeah, I also have to think about exactly what you were saying, all the people that, hopefully you were mingling with, talking to, maybe next time, hey, our books are really kind of similar. How about we go in half this time? And then, that time your 30 to 70 turns into 30 to potentially only 50, but you could make more because maybe that person, as you're saying, has a little bit more experience, exposure themselves, which brings you exposure.
Exactly. And helping each other and not treating other authors as competition. A lot of times your colleagues, you're going to be going to the same events locally. And I've just found that trying to help other people as much as possible. It's not always reciprocated, but a lot of times people do. It's like, hey, you help me, I'll help you, and everybody wins.
So have you ever gone like outside of like your locale to like a different state or a completely different city for a convention?
I've mainly done ones that are regional. So I have it. So for me, it'd be the Southeast. So that's most that I have it. I want to do Comic-Con eventually. Dragon Con in Atlanta is massive. I wanted to get a few more books before that would actually, I think, be a good financial decision, is having more books available before I did anything at that scale. But it's one of those things where starting locally and giving yourself enough time to get comfortable and making the mistakes at the local level. That way you can kind of hone your process and then you can kind of grow from there.
So on that note, I have like not really like a 2-question, but like 2-parter. So definitely start low. Don't like jump into the gun on like the most popular, highest ranking, thousands of people are going to be there. Get your feet wet,
Exactly.
Gently. So on the note of making all the mistakes at a local level, what are some of those like more common mistakes or downsides, I guess?
Something I learned early on is your location does matter. And I've asked questions a lot of the people who actually run the cons. It's like, okay, what seems to do well? And I'm probably going to cause myself trouble down the road, but getting a corner will help you compared to being in the middle.
Hi.
So, yeah.
I've also heard not being like right in the front beginning when people are first walking in is you would think would be the best spot, but it's not because people are just getting there. They're seeing all this other stuff that they want to look at.
Yeah, you'll get bypassed.
They might not remember to come back to you.
Probably the funniest situation was this is when there was actually a group of about 4 or 5 of us, and we were all stationed near the restrooms, and no sales happened. It was like one of those things where it's like people we were trying to stop and say hi, but it's like I gotta go, and so it's like
they into the bathroom, and then I guess they're rushing away. Like they don't want to
they don't need to hear what I did in there.
Yeah.
So if you end up near a bathroom,
ask to be moved if you can.
So then, ask to be moved if you can. Are there anything like as far as in your experience to kind of help maybe kind of garner a few sales?
And higher corners special. Let's circle back to corners.
Okay.
The thing about corners is you are able to stand to the side of your booth, not just behind it. And I do recommend, if you can, stand for as long as you can. Because the thing that I've noticed is even if you're attentive, even if you're sitting, I have seen it where people look like they're bored and they're talking on their phone, or playing on their phone, that's not going to work for you. But I mean, even just sitting, people tend to pass by you because you're not at eye level. So if you're standing the entire time, you're going to get more interaction. More people are going to stop by. I usually have bookmarks just so that way I have something in my hand. If people seem interested, I don't give it. I'm not like the person at the mall where they have the lotion. I'm not to that level. I'm just like, if somebody seems like they're interested, then they get a bookmark. I'm not trying to hassle anybody.
Them in the face as they're walking by.
Yes. No, perfume. Yes. But and there's a balance to it, and over time you kind of learn how to read people too. It's like, okay, this is somebody that's trying to get over to get their autograph with the celebrity. They're not interested in a book right now. And the thing with genre cons is you're going to have to expect that. Not everybody is going to be interested in books, but if it's something where they're interested in the story, they may pass that along to a friend or a relative, and it's still the main thing is just having the positive interaction. You don't have to sell everybody.
Right. Yeah. So what is the goal of being at a convention?
In terms of sales, it's one of those things I almost look at it as almost like a filtering. You're going to have a bunch of people passing by. Out of those, a few people are going to stop. Out of those, you're going to have some conversations about the book, and then a percentage of people buy. And it's almost a numbers game of finding the people who match up with what your story's about.
So no, I'm sorry. My daughter and I, we just watched Ralph Breaks the Internet last night, and so I just had this image in my head that cons are almost like a live action Amazon algorithm of
yes.
With some people are going to see your ad, they're going to click it, they're going to read through. Some might end up buying it. Anyway, that was tangent. Yeah. But
you may also like this.
Speaking of tangents, we have a question from chat. Shadow Illustrator asks, seems like the best place to ask, what's a good way to connect with authors?
Just fellow authors or as an artist?
You know what? Let's just answer it all. And it doesn't have to be conventions. Like, what do you think, Patricia and Kayleen? What's the best way to connect with other authors?
Usually at these, I usually go by when things aren't busy or usually before everything opens. And I just usually say hi and ask what their books are about. No different than really any other reader. And a lot of times it's one of those things. It's like if they're the same genre as me, that could be a good thing where it's like, okay, if you, because if you're having that interaction, okay, this person also writes something similar. You may like this. and helping each other that way. And even and sometimes you run into situations where people read a totally different genre, and you can bounce back and forth that way too. And a lot of times it's just one of those things, as just writers in general, we're all kind of going through the same things, and having that connection there, where most of the time you're writing all the time, and it's a very solitary thing a lot of times, and just meeting other people locally is kind of nice.
Gilliam, what do you think? What's a good way to connect with authors? Whether you're a fan or whether you are an editor, an illustrator, a formatter who would like to work with someone.
Ooh, did not prepare for this question. To meet authors, interact with them. I mean, I know like a lot of authors, we were really trying to get, the hang of the social media. How do we separate that from, how social media we used before in our personal life? I mean, it's a totally different beast, now that it's more business oriented. So, I mean, I would definitely say, because a lot of them, they do have Facebook pages, even though I know, I've heard a lot that, like Facebook pages for, authors and stuff like that, they're not as viable because of boosting and all the other nonsense, but we won't get into that. I mean, you can still, touch base with them. You can message them that way. I know newsletters are huge. So if you can find them on the Facebook, the Instagram, the Pinterest, or the Twitter, and be like, hey, do you have a newsletter? I would love to hear more about you, your work, things like that, and you get onto that, then, I mean, you would always have a connection that way.
Yeah, Patricia, what do you think? If you're a professional seeking to team up with an author, to work with an author, what's one good way for a professional to reach out to an author?
A lot of times I don't mind, like with Facebook messaging and things like that, where somebody will just send me a quick message, hey, this is what I do. It does get kind of weird for if somebody friends you and then immediately does that.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of, yeah, don't do that. But if it's something where it's like, okay, I'm like even with groups like Future Chronicles and here with Keystroke, a lot of times it's like, okay, if I know somebody and it's like, hey, this is what I have available, I'm completely fine with that, or at least having one of those situations of, hey, if I need this, I know a few people now who I could go to, and it's kind of related to sales. The more familiar you are with someone, even in a non-sales situation, the better you're going to feel about working with them. So if I know somebody as a person, then
I just wanted to add to what you were saying just a little bit ago about the you immediately want to friend them so that you can get in touch with them on Facebook. So instead of, in the message, it's like that creepy, why are you automatically telling me these things? If you've spent time, sort of like seeing what sort of circles they run in, you've liked posts that they've maybe made comments in or made themselves, because of groups like, Keystroke, the 20 Books group, you could message them with, hey, I just read that comment you made on such and such post. I really wanted to let you know that, enter whatever it did for you. And at least that way, you're opening up like, an evil.
It's like diabolical.
An even plane to, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's less creepy, because they're like, oh, okay, so they're in that group. They saw my post, especially with certain groups, they're closed. So you can only get into them if you're accepted. It kind of lessens that creep factor, stranger danger. You're more likely to get a response back and start, that conversation back and forth.
And something I've noticed, that the people who are really good at that, they will put stuff out to help people. That's not the only reason they do it, but if it's something where it's like, okay, this is something, I see really good editors do that. It's like, okay, this is a common thing that trips people up. here's something that you can do to correct that. Just little things like that over time. It's one of those things. It's like, okay, this is somebody who generally wants to put out value to people. This would be somebody that I'd like to work with. That kind of thing. And it's not all the diabolical kind of thing. It's just a way of connecting with people.
I really didn't mean to.
It's okay. I'm sorry. I'm just.
So the common theme I'm hearing here is whether you're interacting with people in person at a con or whether you're interacting with people on social media, try to help. Try to honestly help the other person. Make connections. Make friends, but be there to help other people. Not primarily to sell yourself or some end goal for yourself, but to help others.
Yeah, I think the author equivalent is just like either putting out like a portion of your work for free, or and just being helpful or something. If somebody has a question, it's like, okay, I have experience in one topic, and everybody's strong at different things. Not everybody's an expert on everything, and I just try a bunch of stuff and see what works. But it's one of those things where something I like about being indie is just that community dynamic of everybody helping each other.
Yeah, Bill Frisbee in the chat says, to have friends, you must be a friend. Yes.
There, very good, yes.
Sums it up right there. So if we're weighing whether or not we should do a con, we're thinking about the benefits, we're thinking about our goals. Our goal is to connect with other professionals. Our goal is to connect with our own audience people who haven't found us yet, and also to get on social media and say, hey guys, hey, my readers, I'm going to be at this con. You can come on over and meet me. I want to meet you. You get to meet your fans in person. That's awesome. Even if they can't make it, you can take pictures of the events and share it on social media. You can do Facebook Lives. You can do Instagram stories and share your experience so that your readers can have a little peek in what it's like to be at a con and can experience that with you. So that could be a goal and a benefit of going to a con too, is just that you're out about, you're meeting your fans, you're meeting your audience, and you're able to share that with your readers. So even if they can't make it, they can kind of see that, enjoy that through there, and maybe share you. Who knows?
So before we dive deeper, we do have a show sponsor today. I'm going to take a little break and do that. So our show sponsor tonight is brought to you by, and I'm probably going to mess up this name, but let's hope I don't. Calida? Did I say it wrong? No, Calida. Okay, start over. Take two. Calida's Forge, a Castre. God dang it. Okay. Take three. Calida's Forge, a Castre World novel, book 3 by Ericka Shanniack. She tried to outrun stained blood ties. Now, the obsession of a madman has her captive. Because all Calida wanted was to create a safe and loving life for her and her young sister, and happiness seemed within her grasp. Her soft heart made her open to true love. Her iron will and strength made her desirable to the mad king of the Borderlands. Desperate to escape, her only shimmer of hope lies with the man who loves her. Like the metal in her hearth, her spirit has been forged by fire. But will it be enough? Revisit the magic and humor of the Castre world and the determined, ambitious women historical fantasy readers adore. Immerse yourself in a new happily ever after. Buy Calida's Forge today.
Yay!
And I'm so sorry, Ericka. I don't know why that word is just so difficult.
Castre.
Castre world. There we go.
All right. So we talked about goals and figuring out.
Sorry. Did you get the link? I didn't.
Oh, I forgot the link. Okay. You ask the next question. I'll drop the link.
I'm so sorry. What is the next question? Technical difficulties. Okay. Okay. Well, here's one. We've kind of like sort of talked about it. What should I do to prepare for a convention? What sort of things should I bring along? And how do I set up this booth that you speak of?
Okay. Something that's really good, if it's something where this has got to be your own booth for the very first time, authors usually qualify for artist alley tables, which are going to be cheaper than a typical vendor booth. So say with most cons, say if a normal vendor booth is $250, you may be able to get it for $125. Now they're typically smaller, but you get 2 badges, which could be you and a relative or you and another author, and you can split it up that way. Getting on the cons vendor mailing list is helpful, so that way you get the notification, especially if it's something where it's kind of reserved first come, first serve. I've been in other situations where you know roughly the region of the building you're going to be in, and you have to get there and claim a table. And so that's another thing where the whole theme of this is do things as early as possible, and it'll save you a lot of hassle later. With ordering your books, try to give yourself enough of an advance where you're not having to pay like the express shipping, or being worried about, okay, are they going to arrive in time? Same way with your bookmarks. I've had really good luck. There's a company called Print Place. I get my bookmarks from them, really affordable. I used to do Vista Print, and they're good for certain things too. And then when you go to set up, usually it's just going to be a very plain table. They'll probably have a kind of a black skirt around it. I usually keep a couple of solid black tablecloths, one to go over the top. The other one you can use as a cover. So when you leave at night, you can just keep everything covered up. You can roll those like t-shirts. That way they're not wrinkled. I've seen that a lot where they're all folded all weird in storage and everything, and you have to work that out. And let's see, I've actually got notes on this so that way I don't forget.
We love notes.
Let's see here.
So while you're looking, find out those cons you're interested in early. Sign up for their mailing list. Look for the artist alleyway table. Maybe you want to split that with a friend. It's really, as an author, you don't need that much space. You don't need a giant table, probably. See, the table. What else did we hear, guys? Black tablecloths, 2 of them. What else?
As far as the books, we pack everything in these very small rolling suitcases. You're able to navigate crowds a lot easier that way than having some big, massive wagon or a really large case. And as far as your setup, don't feel obligated to have a really big setup out of the gate, especially if you're trying to get a feel of like, okay, do I like this? Is this something I want to do long term? Because that can get expensive. If you're not doing this all the time, it may not. A lot of times the banners that you see at a lot of these cons, those might range from a couple $100s a piece, depending on the company. I have collapsible book stands. Those run about $40 a piece, and they're very portable. But if it's something where if I wasn't doing a lot of events, it may not have been worth it. And then anything as far as a setup that increases your visibility, and a lot of times the height is going to be what draws people in, because not everybody does that. And part of that is budget. So it's one of those things where even with a very small space, if you have a lot of height, you'll get more attention. The big banner, collapsible banners that pull up, and then usually your book covers. So if it's something whoever does your covers can probably they have templates where they can design the banners as well. Just enough cash to make change. A lot of people, especially in the larger cons, you're going to have a Square reader or some sort of equivalent, because people aren't carrying cash as often. Battery packs for your phone, just in case when there's a lot of foot traffic, your cell service is going to struggle and your phone's going to die quicker. So having that handy.
I have heard that those e-chip card reader things, they do take up a lot of battery power.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah, and you don't want that to die on you when somebody comes up and wants to buy something, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry. And then it's what having bringing in your own food and snacks. They usually don't mind that, and a lot of times you're going to be sneaking and trying to get like snack foods in between meals. People will come up to you and ask you about your book in the middle of eating snacks. That's just a given.
So don't bring a giant tuna sub.
Yes, yes.
What should I bring instead? What do you recommend?
Protein bars are really good in between, and then we usually eat the food at the con too when we just for convenience and that kind of thing. But in between, and because just with standing a lot and everything, your energy does wane, where you have to get a break in every once in a while and that kind of thing.
Ken asks, how many books should you have on hand?
I usually do if you have a series, do probably about 2 to 3 times as much with book 1 as you do with your sequels. And that a lot of times that'll just depend on budget and how many you think you're going to sell. A lot of times with strangers, they're going to just buy book 1 to check it out. But the more that you do, I've noticed over time that if people bought book 1 at a previous one, they may see you again and pick up the sequels. And so you kind of have to balance that the longer that you do it. But as far as starting out, just do a higher percentage of your first book than the sequels. If you have multiple series, kind of have it split out. If you have different genres, that way you can kind of direct people, okay, if you like this, all of these books are over here. If you like this other topic, that way you can kind of split things out and kind of direct people. And then just as overall number, according to the size of the con, I usually do anywhere from 50 to 100.
Bring along 50 to 100. Wow.
I've done one like convention type thing, and I think I brought like 10 books.
Yeah, and that's something that's built over time. That did not happen overnight. That I think the very first one that I did that I tagged along with my friends, I think I sold 2 the whole weekend, and I was happy because I didn't want to have bagel on my first one.
So I do have like a side question, because the type of, I wouldn't really even call it a con. It was more like a street fair type thing. So there's going to be like a lot of different stuff there. So I probably went to the absolute wrong one for my first one, because there's people making crochet flowers down that way, and some kind of duck bench things over here. And then there was us with our book booth. So I don't know if that's really a question, but
there is kind of a related thing. Is I've seen multiple things at the same booth, to where people are trying to multitask and sell their books and other things. And if it's something where you can get to the point where it's so distracting that people don't know what to buy, they just get confused. But when you're in a situation where you're the person selling books and you're surrounded by the crochet and the other things, it's kind of like, okay, what do I do? Because it's and I've done things like that where it's kind of hit or miss. It's one of those things where you may do really well because you might be the only author, or it may just be something where people are there for the crochet things, and it's kind of hard to judge. And it's that's why at least if it's something where the booth isn't that expensive, if this is like a $25, $30 thing, I might try it. But if it's something where it's like, okay, I actually want to make a profit at this, I try to focus on the ones that are genre specific at least.
There you go. Don't just hit up any random street fair. Try to at least get where there are going to be readers, not just people who are like, hey, we could go walk around that place that's got a lot of colors.
Yeah. And something too, it was kind of a unconnected thing, but bookstores started contacting me more after I started doing cons. And I don't know if it's just the the social thing of, okay, they know that you can do an event, or if that's how they found out, that kind of thing. And so that can lead to basically other opportunities where it's just the table by yourself in a location. So that's almost like a whole other thing. But
yeah, I wonder if they wouldn't get the convention's mailing list, do they?
Possibly, it would probably depend. This was kind of local area, so it might have been, or the employee might have heard something, or they were looking for somebody to do an event, that kind of thing.
So it's kind of, I mean, it's a little bit related, because I mean, you're still getting in front of complete strangers, you know. There are a lot of extroverted writers, but there's still plenty who are like the people. So I mean, if you know, because there's Devin Seaford, he's just recently over in the UK did a like a by himself, I'm assuming, type sit at a table. Have you done many of those? If there's any tips to, you know, authors who have this local opportunity to be at their library or somewhere.
I've done a few of them. It's a little bit different because the pace is slower. More people will talk to you, though. It's one of those things where you might end up having a 30-minute conversation with someone, whereas with some of these cons, you may literally have like a minute or two to talk with somebody, and then they're ready to move on to the next thing. There's a different energy to it. And a lot of times it'll vary on the day too. At an actual con, Fridays and Saturdays are going to be the most physically busy. We've done some where Sundays may be the most sales, though, because people have kind of looked around and they have more time to kind of take things slower, and a lot of times it just depends on the environment. So I haven't found a predictable pattern, but it's one of those things. It's really interesting how different environments can affect your sales one way or another.
So what tips do you have for the people who are more introverted in getting into that headspace? I think you said earlier about turning on, like, you know, it's now time to be friendly. So what tips do you have for helping the people to get in that headspace, to turn that on, make friends when that's not their comfort zone?
When I first started doing this, I almost had the feeling like when you're in elementary school and you had to make a report in front of the class, that kind of, that nervousness that, okay, what if, and it's always worse in your head than it is in reality. It's one of those things. People are there, they're relaxed, they're having fun. This is entertainment. They're getting to see people from television and movies, and they're excited. And most of the time they're excited to talk to you. A lot of times, if it's something where if they don't know many authors, I like the reaction of where I'm standing at the side of the table and they're like, "Wait, you're the author? You're not the person just handing out stuff," and that kind of thing. But a lot of times think of it as a bunch of miniature conversations. Don't think of it as I have to sell. Because if you get into that one, it's either going to feed more nervousness, or it's almost going to come off as desperate, and you don't want that. You don't need that. I mean, if you're doing something creative that you love, and just kind of being open about that and just talking about it, most of the time it's gonna get it rolling for you enough to maintain the conversation.
So what are some ways that you approach, you know, these people? Like how do you open the conversation? Because people walking by aren't always going to want to open a conversation, because, you know, like if it's early in the day or they've just started walking around or they're not going to be buying anything that day, they're waiting like to the Sunday. Mm-hmm. What are some ways that you open up a conversation without, you know, opening up, "Hey, I have books to buy. You want to buy a book?"
I usually say hi to everyone, just greeting people, that kind of thing. And then I usually ask, "Hey, are you? What's been your favorite thing so far?" and that usually will lead into and you know what shows they like, and it's one of those things where people are passionate, and if you get them talking about what they're passionate about, and you can kind of get a feel from there on whether it's like, okay, are my books going to be something that they would like, and even if they're not, it's not that big of a deal. It's almost like okay, this is I've met someone new, and
maybe they have a cousin who does like this genre.
Yep, exactly. And I get that a lot of oh, my kids like this genre, or my sister, brother, and a lot of times they will still take a bookmark. They might not even like to read, but they're like, I know somebody, and that kind of and it's just doing that over and over again.
So you're saying that the trick, especially as an introvert, is to not make it about you.
Exactly.
About the other person.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Yeah. Brilliant.
Feeling you're so right. That's the takeaway I'm getting is it's not the headspace you should come in is not, this is about me making sales. It's actually about meeting fans. Maybe even fans who don't know they're fans yet. So just go out there, meet people, see what they're ask, what have you enjoyed so far, see what they're passionate about, and then, if it naturally turns to your books, that's great, but you're meeting people, you're meeting fans, people who don't know they love you, and they do, and they'll find that out soon enough.
And that takes all the pressure off of you, and you can actually enjoy it, and it's not the salesy kind of feeling.
I like it a lot.
So next question, kind of basic. What should I wear?
I try to do kind of business casual. I do end up wearing sneakers because a lot of times I'm doing my own load in, and even the high name authors, even Timothy Zahn, he loaded in his own stuff. So I mean, everybody's. So you want to be comfortable. You want to factor in the fact that you might be standing for 4 or 5 hours at a time, but not including when you take breaks and that kind of thing. I have friends who cosplay, and they love it, and it draws people in. And so if you love to do that and it draws people into your table, go for it.
Cosplay as your own character?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That would, as this other question we have on here, set you apart from other tables.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Are there any other kind of things that you've seen or you've done to set you apart, or you've been walking through and been like, wow, that is an awesome setup? What are some of those things that you could pass along?
It was really funny starting out. Some of the most effective things were the most simple. Some people just had a big bowl of candy. So it was basically bribery of show up here and talk to us and you will get candy.
The one place you can offer candy and it's not creepy.
Right, exactly. And a lot of times it's just if you have really awesome covers for your book, and of course with permissions and that sort of thing, use those to your advantage on everything else. The banners, the any type of thing, your postcards, bookmarks. That way you at least have kind of a marketing theme going to where you're recognizable. Because a lot of times people go to multiple cons a year, and even if it's something where it's like, okay, they may not buy anything this round, but that repetition, there's things that I've read where it's something like it's some ridiculous number. It's like 21 or 22 times people have to see something before they buy it. That kind of thing. And it's one of those things of just being patient and realizing that it may not be the first go around. It may take you a few tries to kind of adjust and make modifications to your booth until you have something that's effective, and being willing to experiment with it. Okay, if this works, I'm going to keep it. If not, I'm going to try something else next time.
So I have a two-part.
Real quick question about the postcards or whatever little card you're handing out. You want them to go and find your book on Amazon, right? So you could have a link on there, but that's a whole lot of letters and numbers that don't make sense. So you could use a QR code. But do people still use QR codes? Is that a thing?
There was a period probably about 3 or 4 years ago where it was a really popular thing. It's kind of faded out. It's not as, I still have the a few bookmarks that have it on it, but as far as it being effective,
I've never seen one of the little boxes and been like, hey, I'm gonna scan this thing.
I don't have one of my bookmarks nearby, but what we did, my husband and I, was do the shortened links. There's like a abbreviated Amazon link that did fit, and the way my husband, he does graphic design, so it was one of those. He did a lot of my covers, and he just had the shortened Amazon link to the side of each book. And so I fit, it was, I think, 5 or 6 books onto one bookmark with that little shortened link to the side. Yeah. And so technically, if somebody typed that in, it is going to direct to Amazon. And I think you can get that if you have an affiliate account with them. I think it'll generate that for you to where you can get that link, and it's probably about half the size of a normal link, and it so that might be something to test out. Yeah. And there is a little bit of residual. So like following a con, the sales may not happen while you're at the con. Give it a week or two, and you'll kind of notice a spike afterwards. And so kind of factor that in. It's like, okay, I didn't sell as many as I thought I did during the weekend, but then you look week or two down the road and it's like, yeah, this is more than normal. So people go through stuff. You have to be kind of patient. Not everybody goes home and dives in the moment they get home, that kind of thing.
So, side thing, Drew Avery says, "Hey Patricia."
Hey.
and for because I know you mentioned like the banners. I mean, they can get upwards of $200-300. Stands for all the books can be $40 plus. So for the author on a budget, because it's always, a very popular question. I don't have a big budget. I only have a little bit to go around. What are some tips to sort of like to make your booth the best it can be, as far as being able to display your books, display these note cards or the bookmarks or whatever it may be?
It's one of those things. The first couple of years that I did this, my whole thing is I don't ever want to go into debt trying to fund this. That's just a overall personal policy. And it's one of those things where I started off with just book stands that were a couple of dollars a piece, and just having one book of each displayed out, and then the rest of them were in stacks. Now, that may not have gotten me as many sales as having the banners and everything later, but I took and cycled what I did make into improving everything. So, and just from a business standpoint, don't feel obligated to rush it, because you're going to get a lot in the learning process to where you're going to do it better. Kind of spend the first couple of times you do this looking at what other people do, finding out what's effective for them, and then just kind of apply it to your own. And that's one way of being able to make improvements without it putting you into the hole, because you don't want this to be to the point where, from a financial standpoint, you resent it, because it's like, oh, I did this and I didn't make what I wanted to make, and it just becomes a negative experience. You don't want to do that to yourself. But taking your time and just cycling it to where it gets better, I think that's been the thing that's worked for me.
So to add to what you're saying, so the one that I did, I actually went to a like a secondhand store and looked through all like the picture frame area place, and found those 3-tiered, standing things that you could put like a picture or something on. And I just put my book on there, so at least it was sitting up, and it cost me 25 cents.
Yep.
So go hounding at those places, and get a can of spray paint for $2
and not to get people's hopes up, but we have gone to thrift stores and where businesses get done with the stands. Now you still have to buy the poster, but we have found the collapsible stands, which probably would run about $30 or $40 a piece at thrift stores for like $2 or $3, because businesses will have them. They get done with whatever the purpose was, and then they just drop them off. So that definitely on the thrift store shopping, you can find stuff. So it's we've lucked out a few times of different things. Of wow, I did not expect to find this.
All right. So if this is like your very first con that you're doing, go thrift store shopping. Mm-hmm. Find some kind of stand or something. Get your book propped up. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to break the bank that way. Mm-hmm.
Sure. If you have no budget, use your books to prop up your other book. At least so that way one of them is vertical.
And bring candy in a glass jar.
Yep.
Yeah, candy after the holidays is on sale. It's cheap and it lasts a while. So bring it.
And it's one of those things you will have so many funny things happen that it's one of those things. Just looking back on some of the stuff that just friends and I have done, where it's just like, oh, that went terribly, but we learned, and so
always be on the lookout for things that you can improve on, and make sure you stay friendly, and have fun. Always have fun.
Yeah, always have fun.
So we are getting to the end of the hour. Did you have any lingering questions, Lauren?
I'm just looking. I think we actually have them.
Touched on a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. So where can our viewers, listeners, the people in the Nestosphere find you and whatnots?
Most of my books are on Amazon. I'm in a few Barnes & Noble physical stores, but not very many, mainly Tennessee. But definitely can find me on Amazon.
All right. And
in Keystroke Medium. She is a fan of Keystroke Medium. And
definitely.
Yeah, so reach out. We'd love to hear from you too.
Yes. So, then it vanished. Where'd you go? Come back. All right. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
As always, viewers, listeners, let us know what you thought about the show in the comments. Hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and join us on Thursdays. You can also join us on Mondays with Josh and Scott and their amazing shenanigans and all the authors that they talk to as well. For Lauren Moore, I am Kayleen Williams. Thank you for joining us on your writer's journey. Join us next week where we're going to talk about some reading, we're going to talk about some writing, and everything in between right here